Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is David, and I should have trusted my gut the moment Lauren stepped 3 feet ahead of me on the Whispering Pines Trail, that gray October morning in 2018. 22 years as a forest ranger had taught me to listen to that cold knot in my stomach, that electric tingle at the base of my skull that meant something was wrong in these woods. But Lauren was laughing at something on her phone, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she walked, and I was distracted by the text message from my wife Sarah. Don't forget Emma's soccer game at 3. She's been talking about you being there all week. I looked down at my phone for maybe 15 seconds, typing back, wouldn't miss it for the world, when the forest went completely silent. No bird calls, no wind through the pine needles, no footsteps ahead of me. Just that suffocating quiet that makes your ears ring and your heart skip. I looked up from my Motorola and Lauren was gone. 3 meters ahead, around a slight bend in the trail, like she'd simply evaporated into the morning mist that clung to the Douglas firs surrounding us. "Lauren," I called, my voice sounding flat and wrong in the unnatural silence. The word seemed to get swallowed by the trees before it traveled more than a few feet. My ranger instincts kicked in immediately. I checked my GPS coordinates, marked the exact spot with a dropped pin, and started scanning the ground for sign. Boot prints in the soft pine needle carpet showed her path clearly up to a point about 10 feet ahead, then nothing. Like she'd been lifted straight up into the canopy. That was 6 hours ago, and now I'm writing this on my phone while sitting against a massive cedar, trying to make sense of what's been happening since Lauren vanished. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely type, and not from the October cold seeping through my ranger jacket. The temperature gauge on my radio shows 42 degrees, but the chill I'm feeling goes deeper than that, settling into my bones like ice water. The first time I heard Lauren's voice calling for help, it came from the north, maybe a quarter mile off the main trail. "David, help me, I'm hurt!" Crystal clear, unmistakably her voice with that slight Texas accent she'd never quite lost after moving to Colorado. My heart hammered against my ribs as I crashed through the underbrush, following the sound, my pack bouncing against my back with each desperate stride. But as I got closer to where the voice had come from, it moved. Further north, always just out of reach. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in David's situation? Comment below. 3 hours of chasing that voice through increasingly thick forest, and something in my gut kept screaming that this was wrong. Lauren's voice never got hoarse, never showed signs of panic or pain beyond that initial call. It was too perfect, too controlled, and there was something else. Something my rational mind couldn't quite grasp, but my ranger instincts were picking up like a radio signal. The voice was always coming from the direction of the deepest, darkest part of the forest, where the old-growth pines grew so thick they blocked out the sun even at midday. My radio crackled with static as I tried to call it in to the station. "Dispatch, this is Ranger 47. I have a missing person situation on Whispering Pines Trail. Grid reference." But all I got back was white noise that sounded almost like whispers. My cell phone showed 1 bar, then no service, then 1 bar again. The GPS kept losing satellite connection, showing my position jumping around the map like I was teleporting through the forest. That's when I heard my daughter Emma's voice for the first time. "Daddy? Daddy, where are you?" I'm scared. Coming from somewhere to the west, her 8-year-old voice small and terrified in the gathering dusk. Every instinct I had as a father overrode 22 years of ranger training. I was running before I'd even made a conscious decision, branches tearing at my uniform, my radio bouncing on my belt, but Emma was supposed to be at school. It was Thursday, 2:30 p.m. according to my watch. She should be in Mrs. Henderson's 3rd grade classroom, probably working on multiplication tables or reading about the solar system. The voice led me in a wide circle, always just ahead, always moving. "Daddy, please, I can't find you." And underneath that desperate plea, I started to notice something that made my blood run cold. The acoustic signature was wrong. In 22 years of search and rescue, you learn how voices carry in different terrain. Sound bounces off rock faces, gets absorbed by dense forest, changes pitch with distance and humidity. But these voices, Lauren's, now Emma's, they sounded like they were coming from inside a recording studio. Perfect clarity. No environmental distortion. No Doppler effect as they moved. My wife Sarah's voice joined the chorus as darkness began to fall. "David, honey, where are you? We're lost. We need you." The rational part of my brain knew this was impossible. Sarah was at home, probably starting dinner, maybe helping Emma with homework, but the voices were so perfect, so absolutely convincing, that I found myself following them deeper into the forest, despite every instinct screaming at me to stop. The trees here were ancient, massive pines that had been growing when pioneers first crossed these mountains. The canopy was so thick that my flashlight beam seemed to get absorbed after just a few feet, creating a tunnel of light in an ocean of black. My boots crunched on pine needles that might have been accumulating for decades, and the air smelled of resin and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left too long in the sun. That's when I saw the first cocoon. It was hanging about 15 feet up in a massive pine, barely visible in my flashlight beam. At first I thought it was some kind of wasp nest or maybe a bear cache wrapped in plastic sheeting, but as I played my light over it I could see it was organic, like a spider's egg sac but enormous. Maybe 6 feet long and shaped vaguely like a human body. The surface was translucent and wet-looking, and there was something dark inside. Something that looked like it might be wearing hiking boots. My radio squawked with sudden clarity. "David, you need to get out of there. Now." It was my supervisor Jim's voice, but Jim was supposed to be off duty, and the transmission was coming through perfectly despite the fact that I'd been getting nothing but static for hours. There's something in those woods that's been taking people for years. Local tribes won't even hunt in that area anymore, but even as Jim's voice was warning me to run, I could hear Lauren calling from deeper in the forest. "David, I found a way out. This way." And underneath that, Emma. "Daddy, we're right here. Come find us." The voices were coming from a direction where my flashlight revealed dozens more cocoons hanging from the trees like some kind of nightmarish fruit. Some were old and dried, hanging like empty chrysalises. Others looked fresh, still wet and glistening. And in the center of this organic graveyard, I could see a clearing where something was moving. 22 years of ranger training told me to call for backup, to retreat, to mark the location and come back with a team. But 6 hours of guilt over losing Lauren on my watch, plus the voices of my family calling for help, had pushed me beyond rational thought. I was operating on pure instinct now, and my instincts were screaming two contradictory messages. Get the hell out of there, and save your family at any cost. I pushed through the last stand of trees into the clearing, and that's when I saw it. The thing that had been stealing voices. It was roughly humanoid, but wrong in every proportion. Too tall, maybe 8 feet, with arms that hung almost to the ground. Its skin was pale and translucent like the cocoons, and I could see dark veins or vessels running underneath. But the worst part was its face, or rather where its face should have been. Instead, there was just a smooth surface with a slit that opened and closed like a mouth, but oriented vertically instead of horizontally. And when that slit opened, my daughter's voice came out. "Daddy, you found us. I knew you would." The thing was standing next to a fresh cocoon that was still moving, and through the translucent membrane, I could see blonde hair. Lauren's hair. She was alive in there, suspended in some kind of fluid, and I could see her chest rising and falling in a slow, drugged rhythm. "David," Lauren's voice came from the creature's vertical mouth. "You're just in time. Help me out of here." But my ranger instincts were finally overriding my panic. This close, I could see how the thing worked. It had no vocal cords, no throat, no lungs. The voice was coming from somewhere else. Maybe some kind of organ in its chest that could perfectly reproduce any sound it had heard. And looking around the clearing, I realized it had been collecting voices for a long time. Dozens of cocoons hung from the trees, and each one represented someone whose voice this thing had stolen before trapping them here to slowly digest. Sarah's voice called from behind me. "David, thank God you're here. Help us." I spun around. but there was nothing there. The creature was mimicking multiple voices now, trying to disorient me. Probably the same strategy it had used on Lauren and all the others. But now that I knew what I was dealing with, I could feel the wrongness that my intuition had been trying to warn me about all day. The voices had no breath behind them, no subtle imperfections that make human speech human. They were perfect copies, and that perfection was what made them so unsettling. The creature started moving toward me, and more voices poured out of that vertical mouth. "Daddy, don't leave us. David, I love you. Help me, please." A chorus of every person I cared about, all begging me to come closer. But I was done being manipulated. I pulled out my emergency flare and popped it, filling the clearing with brilliant red light. The creature recoiled, making a sound I'd never heard before, like a tea kettle mixed with a dying animal. The harsh light revealed details I'd missed in the darkness. The cocoons weren't just hanging randomly. They were arranged in a spiral pattern around the clearing, with the freshest ones closest to the center. Lauren's was maybe third in from the edge, which meant this thing had been hunting recently. "How many?" I shouted at the creature, surprised by the sound of my own voice after hours of chasing phantoms. "How many people have you taken?" Emma's voice answered, "All of them, Daddy. Everyone who came looking for the others." The thing was telling me the truth through my daughter's stolen voice. This was a trap that had been running for years, maybe decades. Someone would disappear in the forest, loved ones would come looking, and the creature would use the original victim's voice to lure the searchers deeper into its territory. Then it would add their voices to its collection and wait for the next rescue party. I was probably the latest in a long line of people who had followed familiar voices into this clearing. The only difference was that my ranger training had finally kicked in before I'd gotten close enough to be grabbed. The creature started moving toward me again, cycling through voices faster now, getting desperate. "David, it's me. Please don't leave us. We're so scared." But underneath all those familiar voices, I could hear something else, a wet, clicking sound that might have been its true voice. The sound of something that had never been human trying to figure out how human vocal cords worked. I backed toward the edge of the clearing, keeping the flare between me and the creature. My radio was crackling with voices now. Jim, my wife, even my own voice calling for backup, but I knew they were all fake. The thing was intercepting radio frequencies somehow, trying to confuse me about what was real and what wasn't. But Lauren's cocoon was real. I could see her moving inside it, probably kept barely conscious while the creature slowly digested her. And looking around the clearing, I realized some of the other cocoons might still contain living people. This wasn't just about saving Lauren anymore. This was about stopping something that had been feeding on lost hikers and campers for God knows how long. The creature lunged at me with surprising speed, but 22 years in the mountains had given me good reflexes. I rolled to the side and came up running, crashing back through the pine forest with the creature's stolen voices echoing behind me. "David, come back! We need you! Don't abandon us!" But now I could hear the wrongness in every word. No breath control, no emotional variation, just perfect reproduction without understanding. It was like listening to a computer trying to simulate human speech. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, finally collapsing against a tree trunk about a mile from the clearing. My radio crackled with genuine static, and when I tried my cell phone, I actually had signal. 2 bars, enough to call for backup. "Dispatch, this is Ranger 47. I need immediate assistance at grid reference." I gave them the coordinates, explained what I'd found as calmly as I could manage. The dispatcher's voice was real. I could hear her breathing, hear the office noise in the background, hear the human imperfections that proved she wasn't another one of the creature's imitations. 20 minutes later, I could hear helicopters approaching from the south. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Lauren. I read every single one. The rescue operation took 3 days. We brought in specialists from Denver, FBI agents who dealt with unusual cases, even a professor from CSU who studied animal mimicry. When we finally went back to the clearing with a full tactical team, we found 23 cocoons. 14 contained human remains in various stages of decomposition. 9 contained living people, including Lauren, who had been missing for less than 12 hours, but was severely dehydrated and in shock. The creature was gone. We found evidence that it had been using that clearing as a hunting ground for at least 30 years, based on personal effects we recovered and missing person reports that matched our findings. But there was no sign of the thing itself. The leading theory is that it migrated to a new territory once its hunting ground was compromised. Lauren recovered physically, but she doesn't remember anything from the time she disappeared until waking up in the hospital. The other survivors reported similar memory gaps. The official report lists it as an unusual predator encounter and recommends increased patrols in the area. I still work as a ranger, but I transferred to a different district. I couldn't stay in those mountains after what I'd seen. And sometimes when I'm alone on a trail and I hear someone calling for help, I stop and listen carefully before I respond. Because I've learned that the most dangerous thing in the wilderness isn't bears or mountain lions or exposure. It's trusting a voice that sounds exactly like someone you love. My name is David, and I should have trusted my gut the moment the forest went silent. But sometimes the worst mistakes teach us the most important lessons. When your instincts are screaming at you to stop, you listen. Even when the voice calling you forward sounds exactly like home. Pruned of supernatural horror story. What did you think of David's terrifying encounter with the voice imitator? Would you have trusted your instincts or followed the familiar voices into the darkness? My name is Joshua, and at 6:47 a.m. on October 15th, 2018, my radio crackled with the call that would shatter everything I thought I knew about reality. Joshua, we've got a missing hiker, 22-year-old female, last seen yesterday evening on the Blackwater Trail. Family's frantic. You're our closest unit. I was already suited up in my standard issue brown uniform, Timberland Pro boots laced tight, my duty belt heavy with a Motorola radio, Streamlight flashlight, and first aid kit. The morning air in Shenandoah National Park carried that crisp October bite, 48 degrees according to my truck's thermometer. Perfect search weather. Copy that, dispatch. Isabella, right? I've got her description from the bolo. I'd memorized the details. 5'6" auburn hair, wearing a red North Face jacket and black hiking boots. Last known position at mile marker 3.2 on Blackwater Trail. 23 years as a park ranger had taught me that missing hikers fell into categories: lost, injured, or dead. Nothing supernatural about it. People got disoriented in familiar territory, took wrong turns, broke ankles on loose rocks. I'd found hundreds of them, some embarrassed, some grateful, some cold and stiff. The drive to the trailhead took exactly 14 minutes. I parked my Ford Ranger at 7:03 a.m., grabbed my Kelty search pack loaded with 64 ounces of water, emergency blanket, rope, and protein bars. My wife Sarah had packed an extra sandwich, turkey and Swiss on whole wheat, just like she'd done for the past 18 years of our marriage. "Be safe, honey," she'd whispered that morning, kissing me goodbye while our 15-year-old daughter Emily slept upstairs. "I'll have dinner ready at 6. I'd promised to be home. I always kept my promises. The Blackwater Trail stretched ahead through towering oaks and maples, their leaves brilliant orange and gold in the early sunlight. My boots crunched through fallen leaves as I followed the well-marked path, eyes scanning for disturbance signs, broken branches, footprints, fabric caught on thorns. At exactly 7:28 a.m., I reached mile marker 3.2. That's when I found Isabella's backpack. It sat perfectly centered on a flat boulder beside the trail, as if someone had placed it there deliberately. No signs of struggle, no scattered contents, just a navy blue JanSport pack with her driver's license visible in the front pocket. Isabella Marie Chen, age 22, Richmond address. My radio crackled. "Base to Joshua, what's your status?" Found her pack at mile marker 3.2, no sign of the subject, beginning expanded search pattern. I followed protocol, establishing a search grid radiating out from the last known position. Standard operating procedure for missing hikers. Nothing supernatural about methodical searching. Except, at 8:45 a.m., I found myself back at the boulder. Isabella's backpack sat there exactly as before. I stopped, frowning. That was impossible. I'd been moving in a systematic outward spiral for over an hour. The mathematics of search patterns didn't allow for returning to the starting point so quickly. Must be more tired than I thought, I muttered, checking my Garmin GPS. It showed I'd covered 2.3 miles, which matched my expectations. The device couldn't lie. I resumed searching, moving deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in, filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns. My breath came out in small puffs as the temperature dropped. According to my watch, it was 9:12 a.m. 33 minutes later, I was back at the boulder. Isabella's backpack hadn't moved. This time I stopped and really studied my surroundings. The fallen log to my left, the distinctive Y-shaped oak tree 20 yards ahead, the small creek babbling 40 feet to my right, all exactly the same. Even the pattern of shadows looked identical. What the hell? I pulled out my GPS again. It showed a different route entirely, a logical search pattern covering new ground. But my eyes told me otherwise. I'd been a ranger for over 2 decades. I knew these woods like my own backyard. Spatial disorientation wasn't in my vocabulary. There had to be a rational explanation. Dehydration could cause confusion. I drank deeply from my water bottle, the liquid cool and refreshing. My head felt clear, no dizziness or fatigue symptoms. Maybe carbon monoxide from nearby campers. But we were miles from any camping areas, and I'd smell smoke if there were illegal fires. Base, this is Joshua. Can you confirm my GPS coordinates? Copy, Joshua. You're showing at 38.7731 north, 78.4372 west, right where you should be for mile marker 3.2. Right where I started. At 10:17 a.m. I was back at the boulder again. The backpack mocked me, sitting in precisely the same position. Even the same piece of quartz caught the light identically. I photographed it with my phone, then marked the time and my exact position in my field notebook. This was impossible. Search patterns don't loop back on themselves. Not unless I was having some kind of medical episode. Early onset dementia ran in my family. Dad had started showing signs at 52. I was 47, but my mind felt sharp. I could recite Isabella's description perfectly, remember every detail of the morning briefing, recall the exact words of my wife's goodbye kiss. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Joshua's situation? Comment below. I decided to test my theory scientifically. At the boulder, I placed a distinctive marker, my spare flashlight, on top of Isabella's backpack. Then I took a compass bearing due north and walked in a perfectly straight line, counting my steps. 100 steps north, 200, 500. The forest grew denser, older. Massive hemlocks stretched overhead, their branches creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere. This was old-growth forest, untouched for centuries. I'd only been in this section twice before, and never this deep. At 1,000 steps, I should have been well beyond any possibility of circling back. I checked my watch. 11:23 a.m. When I looked up, Isabella's backpack sat on the boulder in front of me. My spare flashlight was nowhere to be seen. No. I spun in a circle, heart rate spiking. This is not happening. The rational part of my brain, the part trained in emergency response and crisis management, kicked in. Medical emergency protocols. I needed to call for backup, report possible head injury, get medical evaluation. But my radio only produced static. I checked my phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual in the deep forest. But the time display made my stomach drop. 11:23 a.m. The same time I'd noted when I found the backpack again. I watched the digital display. The seconds ticked normally. 11:23:15, 11:23:16, 11:23:17. Time was moving forward, but somehow I kept ending up at the same place, at the same time, finding Isabella's backpack in the same position. For the next hour, I tested every rational explanation I could think of. I tried walking in different directions, east toward the creek, west toward the ridge, south back toward the parking area, Every path led back to the boulder at exactly 11:23 a.m. I tried marking my route with broken branches, stones arranged in patterns, even tearing strips from my spare shirt. None of the markers remained when I returned. I tried calling out for Isabella, for other hikers, for anyone. The forest swallowed my voice completely. The fourth time I found myself back at the boulder at 11:23 a.m., I noticed something that made my blood freeze. My spare flashlight was back on top of the backpack, in exactly the same position I'd placed it before starting my experiment. "This isn't real," I whispered. "This can't be real." But the weight of my gear, the smell of decomposing leaves, the sound of my own breathing, everything felt absolutely, undeniably real. I could taste the metallic fear in my mouth, feel my heart hammering against my ribs. I was a rational man, a scientist, a professional trained to deal with emergencies and think clearly under pressure. There had to be an explanation that didn't involve what? What was I even thinking? The fifth return to 11:23 a.m. broke something inside my certainty. I sat down hard on the ground beside the boulder, staring at Isabella's backpack. My hand shook as I opened it, looking for clues I might have missed. Her wallet, protein bars, water bottle, digital camera, spare socks, normal hiking gear. I turned on her camera and scrolled through the photos. Standard hiking shots, scenic vistas, selfies on the trail, pictures of wildflowers. The last photo was time-stamped 6:47 p.m. the previous day. It showed the trail ahead, but something in the background made me squint. There was a figure among the trees, distant, blurry, but definitely human-shaped. I zoomed in as much as the small screen allowed. The figure seemed to be watching Isabella, but it was too indistinct to make out details. When I looked up from the camera, my watch read 11:23 a.m. again, but this time something was different. Isabella was standing 20 feet away, her back to me. "Isabella!" I scrambled to my feet, nearly dropping the camera. "Isabella, thank God, are you hurt? We've been looking for you." She didn't respond, didn't turn around, just stood perfectly still among the trees, her red North Face jacket bright against the autumn foliage. "Isabella, can you hear me?" I moved closer, pulling out my radio. "Base, this is Joshua. I've found the missing hiker. She appears to be..." Only static answered me. When I looked up, Isabella was gone. "Isabella, Isabella." I crashed through the underbrush where she'd been standing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign anyone had been there. I was back at the boulder at 11:23 a.m. The backpack sat in its familiar position, but now Isabella's camera showed different photos. The same hiking shots, but the timestamps were all wrong. Some from the future, some from dates that didn't exist. And in every single photo, that distant figure was closer. Much closer. By the seventh loop, I wasn't trying to escape anymore. I was trying to understand. I studied every detail of the boulder, the surrounding trees, the way shadows fell across the ground. Everything repeated with mechanical precision. The same bird call at 11:23:12. The same breeze rustling leaves at 11:23:34. The same distant sound of water over rocks. But Isabella appeared in different locations each time. Sometimes at the edge of my vision, just out of reach. Sometimes I heard her voice calling for help, always from a direction that led back to the boulder. Once I found fresh footprints that ended abruptly, as if she'd simply vanished mid-step. I was a man of science, but science had no explanation for what was happening to me. Time doesn't loop. People don't appear and disappear. Missing hikers don't leave backpacks in the same position while wandering like ghosts through the forest. Unless something was keeping me here. Something that wanted me to find Isabella, but not in any way that made sense to human logic. The eighth loop, I stopped fighting it. I sat on the boulder next to Isabella's backpack and waited. At 11:23:45, she appeared directly in front of me. But it wasn't Isabella. The thing wearing Isabella's face had eyes like holes punched through reality. When it smiled, I could see eternity behind its teeth. "Found me," it said in Isabella's voice, but wrong, like an echo played backward. "What are you?" My voice came out as a whisper. Time, it said. I collect time. Your time. Her time. All the time that should have been. The forest around us began to shift. Trees growing younger and older in fast forward and reverse. I saw seasons cycling in seconds. Snow falling upward, leaves growing back onto branches, flowers blooming and dying in endless repetition. Where is Isabella? The real Isabella? It tilted its head with mechanical precision. When is Isabella? She's everywhere when. She's every time we've done this. That's when I understood. This wasn't my first loop. In another time, another when, I'd found Isabella's backpack and started searching. I'd been trapped here before, experiencing this same horror again and again. The creature fed on temporal energy, on the moments stolen from normal time. How many times had I lived this day? How many versions of myself were trapped in different whens? All searching for Isabella? All finding the backpack at 11:23 a.m.? My family, I said. My wife, my daughter. They're waiting for me to come home. They're waiting in a different when, the creature said. But you can join them, join all the whens, become part of the collection. The offer was tempting, to stop fighting, stop trying to understand, stop being afraid, to just exist in all the moments at once. But then I thought of Sarah's morning kiss, Emily's sleepy smile, the turkey sandwich waiting in my pack. Real moments, real time, real love. No, the creature's smile faltered. No. I stood up, legs steady for the first time since this nightmare began. I'm going home, to my real time, my real family. You can't leave. You're part of the collection now. Watch me. I pulled out Isabella's camera and found the photos with timestamps from impossible dates. But there, buried in the metadata, was something the creature had missed. GPS coordinates that didn't match our current location. Real coordinates, from real time. I followed the compass bearing, walking straight through the shifting temporal landscape. The creature screamed behind me, reality bending and twisting as it tried to pull me back into its collection. But I kept walking, toward real time, toward home, toward the moment when Sarah would ask how my day went, and I'd have to figure out how to explain that sometimes love is stronger than time itself. The forest faded. I found myself standing at my truck at 7:03 a.m., just like I had that morning. But this time, I understood what I was really hunting. Not Isabella, the thing that had taken her. I loaded fresh batteries in my equipment, checked my weapons permit, and called for backup. Not for a missing hiker, for a temporal predator. The hunt was just beginning. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Isabella. I read every single one. My name is Justin, and I saw Sarah for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply disappeared. I've been a ranger for 8 years, but only 3 weeks in Cascade National Forest. Different trees, different sounds, different shadows that seem to move when they shouldn't. The veterans warned me about learning the personality of a new forest, but they never warned me about this. Sarah Chen, 22. Environmental science student from University of Washington. Bright smile, hiking boots that squeaked against wet pine needles, backpack covered in patches from other national parks she'd conquered. She was documenting old-growth Douglas firs for her thesis, and I was assigned to escort her to the restricted research zones deep in Section 7. The morning started normal, October 15th, 2018. 42 degrees, light drizzle, visibility decent through the perpetual mist that clings to these ancient trees like cigarette smoke in a bar. My radio crackled with the usual morning chatter from the ranger station, weather updates, trail conditions, a reminder about the missing hiker from 2 weeks ago that we still hadn't found. This place is incredible, Sarah said, kneeling beside a massive cedar trunk, her voice echoing strangely in the cathedral silence between the trees. Some of these giants are over 800 years old. They were here before Columbus, before the plague, before... She stopped mid-sentence. I was checking my GPS coordinates, making sure we stayed on the approved research trail, when I noticed the silence. Not just Sarah's silence, everything. No bird calls, no wind through the canopy, no distant rumble of the logging trucks on Route 20. Just nothing. I looked up from my GPS. Sarah was still kneeling by the tree, but her back was rigid, unnatural. She was staring into the forest, deeper into the restricted zone where researchers weren't supposed to go. "Sarah, you okay?" She stood slowly, like someone in a dream. Her head was tilted, listening to something I couldn't hear. Then she started walking. Not toward me, not back toward the trail. Straight into the thick undergrowth where the Douglas firs grew so close together, they blocked out most of the sky. "Sarah, wait!" I called, but she didn't turn around. She just kept walking, stepping over fallen logs, ducking under low branches, moving with weird certainty like she knew exactly where she was going. I followed, crashing through Devil's Club and salmonberry bushes that grabbed at my uniform, my radio bouncing against my chest. The forest floor was spongy with decades of decomposed needles, and every step released the smell of earth and decay and something else. Something metallic and cold that made my sinuses burn. "Sarah!" I shouted again. She was maybe 10 feet ahead of me now, moving faster than she should be able to through the dense undergrowth. I could see her blue jacket between the trees, her dark hair catching on branches. Then I blinked, and she was gone. Not hidden behind a tree, not crouched down. Gone, like she'd never existed. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, heart hammering, trying to process what I'd just seen. In my 8 years as a ranger, I'd dealt with lost hikers, medical emergencies, even a few suicide attempts, but I'd never had someone just vanish. I keyed my radio with shaking fingers. "Base, this is Ranger Bishop. I have a code yellow in Section 7. Research escort subject is missing. Repeat, research escort subject is missing." Static. I tried again. "Base, this is Bishop. Emergency situation requesting immediate backup." More static, but underneath it, something else. Like whispers, or maybe wind through dead leaves, or maybe voices speaking words I couldn't quite make out. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline making my fingers clumsy as I fumbled with the radio dials. The battery indicator showed full power. Signal strength looked normal, but all I got was that static with the weird underneath sounds that made my teeth ache. I tried my cell phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual this deep in the forest. But my phone showed I was getting texts, dozens of them, all in the last few minutes. I opened the message app with growing dread. The texts were all from my wife, Emma. "Justin, where are you? Justin, please answer. The kids are asking for Daddy. Please come home. Why won't you answer me? Justin, I'm scared." But Emma knew I was working. She knew I'd be out of cell range until evening. She never texted during my shifts, never panicked like this. And the timestamps were wrong. They all showed the same time. 3:33 a.m. I tried calling her. The call went through, but when she answered, it wasn't her voice. "Justin." It was Sarah's voice, but wrong. Flat. Empty. "Justin, I need help." "Sarah, where are you? I'm coming to get you." "I'm in the dark place, Justin. I'm so cold. Please find me." "What dark place? Give me landmarks. Tell me what you can see." "I can see you, Justin. You're standing by the broken tree. You're afraid." I spun around. There was a broken tree behind me. A massive fir that had snapped about 20 feet up, leaving a jagged spear pointing at the gray sky. But I hadn't noticed it before. "Sarah, how can you..." The line went dead. I tried calling back, but now my phone showed no recent calls, no texts from Emma. The message history was completely empty, like I'd imagined the whole thing. My radio crackled again. "Ranger Bishop, this is Base. What's your status?" Relief flooded through me. "Base, thank God. I have a missing person emergency in Section 7. Research escort subject Sarah Chen has disappeared. I need immediate backup and a search team. Copy that, Bishop. Can you confirm your location? I checked my GPS again. The coordinates didn't make sense. According to the device, I was somewhere near the Canadian border, about 200 miles north of where I should be. I shook it, tried to recalibrate. Base, I'm having GPS issues. I'm in Section 7 near the Old Growth Research Area, about 3 miles northeast of the Cascade River Bridge. Bishop, we show you stationary on your last known coordinates near the Visitor Center. Are you sure you're in Section 7? I'm sure. I've been here all morning with the research escort. Bishop, we don't show any research escorts scheduled for today, and you never checked in this morning. Ice water ran down my spine. That's impossible. Sarah Chen, environmental science student, thesis research on old-growth Douglas firs. I had the paperwork. Stand by, Bishop. The radio went quiet, except for that strange static. I checked my pockets for the research authorization forms, the permits, the contact information for Sarah's university supervisor. Nothing. My clipboard was empty except for a blank daily patrol log, but I remembered. Sarah's squeaky hiking boots, her backpack patches, the way she'd said incredible when she saw the 800-year-old cedar. Bishop, this is base. We need you to return to the station immediately. Follow your GPS coordinates to the nearest trail. I looked at my GPS again. It still showed me in the wrong location, but now it was displaying a route back to civilization. A trail I'd never seen before, heading southwest through forests so dense I couldn't see how anyone could walk through it. Base. The GPS route looks wrong. The forest is too thick. Bishop, trust your equipment and return to base immediately. That's an order. I looked around at the towering trees, the undergrowth that seemed to shift and move when I wasn't looking directly at it, the patches of fog that were definitely getting thicker even though the morning was supposed to be clearing up. I had a choice. Follow orders and trust my equipment, or trust my instincts and keep looking for Sarah. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Justin's situation? Comment below. I made the wrong choice. I started following the GPS route, telling myself I'd come back with a full search team once I reported in properly. The trail was barely visible, just a faint depression in the forest floor between trees that grew closer together than they should. My boots sank into the spongy ground with each step, and the smell of decomposition got stronger. After 20 minutes of walking, I should have reached the main trail system. Instead, the forest just got thicker. The trees were so close now I had to turn sideways to squeeze between them, and their branches formed such a dense canopy overhead that it felt like walking through a tunnel at twilight. My radio crackled. Justin, Sarah's voice again. Sarah, where are you? I'm here, Justin. In the dark place, it's so cold and there are others here. So many others. What others? Sarah, I need you to give me your location. We're all waiting for you, Justin. The ranger who came before you is here too, and the hiker from 2 weeks ago, and the girl from last summer. My blood turned to ice water. What girl from last summer? She had red hair. She was looking for the old church. She's here with us now, in the dark place. She says to tell you that the radio lies. I stopped walking. The forest around me was completely silent except for the crackling static from my radio, and underneath it those whisper sounds that were getting clearer. They sounded like voices. Lots of voices, all talking at once, but too faint to understand. Sarah, listen to me carefully. I'm going to find you, but I need you to tell me what you can see around you. Trees, Justin. So many trees. And the broken tree where you're standing. I looked around. I was standing next to a broken tree, the same massive fir with the jagged spear pointing at the sky. But that was impossible. I'd been walking for 20 minutes. I should be miles away from that tree. I pulled out my GPS. It showed the same coordinates as before, like I hadn't moved at all. Justin. This time it was a different voice on the radio. Male, older. Justin, this is Ranger Martinez. I've been trying to reach you. My hands started shaking. I knew that name. Rodriguez had mentioned him during my orientation, former ranger who'd gone missing in this forest 6 years ago. They never found the body. "Who is this really?" I demanded. "It's Martinez, son. I know you're confused. I was confused too when I first got lost out here. But you need to listen to me now. The radio isn't your friend. It's how they call to you. It's how they make you come deeper." They? The voices in the static. They collect people, Justin. They've been collecting people for a long time. Native tribes used to have warnings about this place, but nobody listens to the old stories anymore. I looked at my radio like it had turned into a snake. The static was getting louder, and I could definitely hear voices now. Not just Sarah and the man claiming to be Martinez, but dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all layered on top of each other. "How do I get out?" I whispered. "You don't," Martinez said, and his voice was sad. "Once they start calling to you, once you follow the voices deep enough into their territory, you become part of the collection. But Justin, there might be a way to save Sarah. She's new. She might not be fully claimed yet." "How?" "You have to find the source, the thing that's been stealing voices, stealing people. It lives in the deepest part of the forest, where the trees are so old they remember when the world was different, where the radio signals get twisted into something else." I keyed the radio again. "Base, this is Bishop. If anyone's listening to this, I need help. I'm lost in Section 7, and I think something's wrong with my radio equipment." The response came immediately, but it wasn't the voice of any dispatcher I knew. "Justin, this is your father. My dad had been dead for 3 years. Justin, you need to come home now. Your mother's making dinner and your sister's here with the kids. We're all waiting for you." I turned off the radio with shaking hands and threw it as far as I could into the undergrowth. But I could still hear it crackling, still hear the voices calling my name, even though it was 20 feet away. The fog was getting thicker, the temperature was dropping, and somewhere in the distance, deeper in the forest, I could hear something that sounded like radio static, but wasn't coming from any radio. I had to find Sarah. I had to find the source, and I had to do it before the voices calling my name got so loud I couldn't resist them anymore. I started walking deeper into the forest, away from the broken tree, away from the GPS route that led nowhere. The voices on the radio got louder behind me, calling my name in the voices of everyone I'd ever loved, calling me to come back, to follow the signals, to join the collection. But ahead of me, in the deepest part of the forest where the trees grew so thick they blocked out the sky entirely, I could see a faint glow. Not sunlight, not firelight, something else. Something that pulsed like a heartbeat and hummed like radio static and whispered like the voices of the lost. I walked toward it, even though every instinct screamed at me to run the other way, because Sarah was somewhere in that glow, and maybe Martinez, and maybe all the others who'd heard the voices and followed them into the dark. The radio behind me was screaming now, not voices anymore, but pure static turned up so loud it hurt my ears even from a distance. The thing in the forest knew I was coming. The thing that had been collecting people for God knows how long, using their voices to call the next victims deeper into its web. But as I walked toward that impossible glow, I heard one more voice on the static. Emma's voice, real this time, not the flat imitation from earlier. She was singing the lullaby she sang to our kids every night, and she was singing it for me. 3 hours later, the search team found Ranger Justin Bishop's radio in Section 7, still crackling with static. They never found his body. But sometimes, late at night, when the atmospheric conditions are just right, rangers in Cascade National Forest report hearing voices on the emergency frequencies, voices calling for help, voices that sound like people they know. And sometimes, those voices sound like Ranger Justin Bishop telling them to follow the radio signals deeper into the forest, telling them he's found something incredible in the dark. The missing persons list for Cascade National Forest has grown longer since 2018, but the radios still work perfectly. They just don't always connect to the right place anymore. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Sarah. I read every single one. My name is Daniel Matthews, And I need to tell you what really happened to Stephanie Chen in the Cascade Mountains 3 days ago. What I witnessed defies everything I thought I knew about reality, about my job, about the safety of my own family. I'm a 15-year veteran of the National Park Service, father of 2 beautiful daughters, Emma, 8, and Lily, 5, and husband to the most patient woman on earth, Rebecca. Before Tuesday morning, the worst thing I'd encountered in these mountains was a meth lab hidden in a defunct mine shaft. I should have known something was wrong when I kissed Rebecca goodbye that morning. Her lips tasted like the vanilla coffee creamer she always used, but underneath there was something metallic, something that made my tongue feel numb. She smiled at me with those perfect green eyes, but for just a split second, I could have sworn they flickered to brown. "Be careful out there, honey," she said, adjusting my radio on my tactical vest. "Emma's soccer game is at 4. Promise me you'll make it home in time." "I promise," I said, meaning it completely. I never missed Emma's games. The call came in at 0847 hours. Missing hiker, 22-year-old female, last seen on the Deer Creek Trail at approximately 1900 hours the previous evening. Stephanie Chen, according to the report. Berkeley graduate student conducting research on old-growth forest ecosystems. Her camping permit was valid through Friday, but she'd failed to check in at the ranger station as required. The October air cut through my Patagonia fleece as I loaded my day pack with standard search gear, GPS unit, first aid kit, emergency shelter, 3 liters of water, energy bars, headlamp, extra batteries, emergency beacon. My Garmin showed 42 degrees at the trailhead, with scattered clouds promising rain by afternoon. Perfect weather for someone to get disoriented and lose the trail. Deer Creek Trail starts as a wide, well-maintained path through second-growth Douglas fir. But after the first mile, it narrows into barely marked switchbacks that climb 2,800 feet over 4 miles to Stephanie's last known position. I'd hiked this route hundreds of times, knew every landmark, every potential hazard. The creek crossing at mile 2 where inexperienced hikers sometimes lost the trail. The false summit at mile 3 where people thought they'd reached the top and turned back. The final push through old-growth forest where cell service died completely. I made good time, my Merrill boots finding purchase on the familiar mix of pine needles and granite dust. My radio crackled every 15 minutes with status updates from the command post, but the signal weakened as I gained elevation. By 10:30 hours, I was picking up more static than voice. At the 2-mile creek crossing, I found my first sign. Boot prints in the muddy bank, size 7 with the distinctive waffle pattern of Salomon hiking boots. Fresh enough that the edges hadn't been softened by overnight dew. Stephanie had definitely passed this way, probably around 8 the previous evening based on the compression depth in the mud. But something was off about the spacing of the prints. Too close together, like she'd been walking with unusually short steps, or like she'd been following someone. I keyed my radio. Base, Ranger 7. I have tracks at the creek crossing, approximately 20 hours old, continuing to last known position. Static. I tried again, got nothing but white noise. Not unusual at this elevation, but it made my chest tighten anyway. 15 years of training kicked in. Always assume you're on your own past the point of reliable communication. The trail climbed steadily through stands of western red cedar and Pacific silver fir, their canopy so thick that even at mid-morning, everything had a twilight quality. My breath came in visible puffs, and I could taste the sharp sweetness of decomposing leaves. Normal forest sounds, squirrels chattering, ravens calling, the distant drumming of woodpeckers, gradually faded until I was hiking in unnatural silence. At 11:47 hours, I reached Stephanie's last known position, a small clearing where the trail split, one branch continuing to the summit, the other dropping down toward a series of alpine lakes. According to her filed itinerary, she'd planned to camp here and spend 2 days collecting soil samples from the old-growth grove just north of the clearing. Her campsite was still there. REI quarter-dome tent, properly staked and guy-lined. MSR camp stove sitting on a flat rock with a titanium pot beside it containing what looked like instant oatmeal mixed with water, but never cooked. Her yellow Gregory pack hung from a bear line exactly 15 feet high and 8 feet from the nearest tree trunk, per regulations. Everything by the book, everything normal, except Stephanie Chen was nowhere to be found. I documented everything with my digital camera, taking shots from multiple angles. The campsite showed no signs of struggle, no evidence of animal intrusion, no indication that Stephanie had left in a hurry. Her sleeping bag was laid out neatly inside the tent, along with clean clothes for the next day. The food hang contained 3 days' worth of meals untouched. But here's the thing that made my stomach clench. Her research materials were spread out on a foam pad as if she'd been working when something interrupted her. Soil sample containers, pH testing strips, a field notebook with entries dated through 7:30 p.m. the previous evening. The final entry, written in precise handwriting, unusual acoustic anomaly from Grove. Voices, investigating. I studied that final line until my eyes burned. Voices, in a forest where I was currently the only human being for at least 5 miles in any direction. The grove she'd mentioned lay 50 yards north of the campsite, a cathedral of old-growth Douglas fir that had somehow escaped every logging operation for the past century. Trees 8 feet in diameter, their canopy disappearing into misty darkness even in broad daylight. The kind of place that made you whisper without knowing why. I followed a faint game trail toward the grove, and that's when I saw Stephanie Chen for the first time. She was standing between 2 massive tree trunks maybe 30 yards ahead, wearing the same bright blue jacket described in the missing person report. At first glance, she looked perfectly normal. Young woman, Asian features, black hair pulled back in a ponytail. But she was standing completely motionless, facing away from me, and something about her posture made every instinct I'd developed in 15 years of wilderness work start screaming warnings. "Stephanie?" I called out. "Stephanie Chen?" She didn't respond, didn't move, didn't acknowledge my voice in any way. I approached slowly, my hand moving instinctively to the bear spray on my belt. 20 yards, 15, 10. Close enough now to see that her blue jacket was perfectly clean, not a single snag or stain despite spending a night in dense forest. Close enough to see that her hiking boots weren't touching the ground. She was floating 6 inches above the forest floor. My rational mind tried to process this, tried to find a logical explanation, but my body had already made the decision to back away. 3 steps. 5. 7. That's when Stephanie Chen turned around. It was her face. Absolutely her face. I could see the resemblance to the driver's license photo I'd studied that morning. Same dark eyes, same small scar above her left eyebrow, same slightly crooked smile. But her expression was completely empty, like looking at a beautiful photograph with nothing behind it. "Hello, Daniel," she said in a voice that was definitely Stephanie's voice, but wrong somehow. Too clear, too precise, like a digital recording. "I've been waiting for you. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Daniel's situation? Comment below." "How do you know my name?" I managed to say, though my mouth had gone completely dry. "I know lots of things about you, Daniel Matthews." She took a step toward me, and I noticed her feet still weren't quite touching the ground. "I know you have 2 daughters. Emma plays soccer. Lily loves unicorns. Your wife Rebecca makes the best banana pancakes in the county." Ice water flooded my veins. Those details weren't in any report, weren't accessible to some random graduate student. My hand closed around the radio, but I knew it was useless at this distance from the repeater. "I know you promised Rebecca you'd be home by 4, Stephanie continued, her voice taking on an odd sing-song quality. "But you're not going to make it, are you, Daniel? Because you're going to help me with something first." "What happened to the real Stephanie Chen?" I asked, backing away slowly, keeping my eyes on her face. She tilted her head, and for just a moment, her features shifted slightly. Her nose a little wider, her cheekbones a little higher, like someone adjusting a mask. "What makes you think I'm not the real Stephanie?" Before I could answer, my radio crackled to life with perfect clarity. "Daniel, Daniel, where are you?" Rebecca's voice. My wife's voice, impossible as that was. Rebecca didn't have access to Park Service radio frequencies, didn't even know my call sign. "Daniel, the girls are scared. There's something wrong at the house." Please come home. Please come home right now. I stared at the radio in my hand, then at Stephanie, who was smiling now with an expression that was entirely too wide for her face. You should answer her, Stephanie said. She sounds worried. I keyed the microphone with a trembling hand. Rebecca, how are you on this frequency? Static. Then, Daniel, I don't know where I am. Everything looks wrong. The house isn't our house anymore. Emma's crying. Lily won't stop asking for you. Why did you leave us here? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was impossible. Rebecca was at home, safe, probably making lunch for the girls right now. We'd kissed goodbye 4 hours ago. I'd smelled her vanilla coffee, felt her warm hands adjusting my radio. Where are you? I asked the radio. I'm home, but it's not home. The walls they're breathing, Daniel. The pictures on the mantel show people I don't recognize. There's a woman here who looks like me, but she's not me. She's wearing my clothes, Daniel. She's wearing my face. The radio went dead. Stephanie stepped closer, and now I could see that her eyes weren't quite the right color. Too dark, like looking into deep water at night. Time's running out, Daniel. You need to choose. Choose what? Your family or her family? She gestured toward the forest around us. You can't save both. What are you talking about? The real Stephanie Chen is alive, Daniel. She's trapped, just like your family is trapped. But you can only save one group. Which matters more to you, a stranger's life or your wife and daughters? I wanted to scream that this was insane, that none of this was real, but the radio crackled again. Daniel, please. The woman wearing my face is talking to the girls now. She's telling them she's their real mother. Emma believes her. Lily's starting to believe her too. How long before they forget about me completely? My legs felt weak. Everything I thought I understood about reality was crumbling, but the terror in Rebecca's voice, whether real or fake, was tearing holes in my chest. Where is the real Stephanie? I asked. The thing wearing Stephanie's face pointed deeper into the grove. Follow the path, but Daniel, every step you take away from your family is a step toward losing them forever. Choose carefully. I looked at my watch. 1:23 p.m. Emma's soccer game started at 4. I'd promised to be there. I'd never broken a promise to my daughters, not once in 8 years of fatherhood. But somewhere in this forest, Stephanie Chen was trapped, and her family was probably getting the same kind of impossible radio calls I was receiving. I started walking deeper into the grove. The path wasn't visible until I was directly on it, a narrow track winding between trees so massive their trunks disappeared into shadows above. With each step, the temperature seemed to drop another degree, and the silence became so complete I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the bark. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, I emerged into another clearing. This one was wrong in ways my brain struggled to process. The trees formed a perfect circle, each one exactly the same distance from the center. The grass was too green, too uniform, like artificial turf. And in the center of the clearing stood a small cabin that definitely hadn't been on any Park Service map. Smoke rose from its chimney in a straight line, unaffected by wind. My radio burst to life again. Daddy? Emma's voice. My 8-year-old daughter. Daddy, where are you? The woman who looks like Mommy says you're not coming home. She says you chose to help a stranger instead of your own family. Is that true, Daddy? I ran toward the cabin. The door was unlocked. Inside, I found a single room with rough-hewn walls and a stone fireplace. Stephanie Chen, the real Stephanie Chen, was tied to a wooden chair in the center of the room. Her face was bruised, her clothing torn, but her eyes were alert and furious. Finally, she gasped when she saw me. How long have I been here? About 18 hours, I said, working at the ropes around her wrists. What happened? I was taking soil samples when I heard voices, children's voices calling for help. I followed the sound and found... She gestured around the cabin. This place. It wasn't here before, I swear to God it wasn't here. Someone grabbed me from behind, and when I woke up I was tied to this chair. Who grabbed you? I don't know. Every time I see them clearly, they look like someone different. Sometimes a man, sometimes a woman. Sometimes... She shivered. Sometimes they look like people I know. My sister. My mother. People who couldn't possibly be here. My radio crackled. Daniel? Rebecca's voice again, but different now. Colder. I know what you're doing. You're choosing her over us. I hope she's worth it because your real family is gone now. Emma and Lily don't remember your name anymore. I finished untying Stephanie and helped her to her feet. We need to get out of here. Which way? I checked my GPS unit, but the screen showed nothing but static. My compass spun wildly, unable to find magnetic north. The cabin had no windows, so I couldn't even tell which direction the sun was. I don't know, I admitted. That's when we heard the voices outside. Daddy, please come out, we're scared. Emma and Lily, my daughters, standing right outside the cabin door. Daniel, what are you doing in there? Come home right now. Rebecca's voice sharp with anger. Stephanie grabbed my arm. Don't go out there, it's not them. It can't be them. But I was already moving toward the door because no matter how impossible it was, those were my daughters' voices, and they were afraid. I opened the door. Emma and Lily stood in the clearing, wearing the same clothes I'd seen them in that morning. Emma's soccer jersey, grass-stained from yesterday's practice. Lily's favorite purple dress with the unicorn on the front. They looked exactly like my daughters in every detail, except their eyes were too bright, too knowing for children their age. Rebecca stood behind them, beautiful and perfect in her morning robe. But her smile was too wide, stretching her face in ways that human facial muscles shouldn't allow. There you are, Rebecca said. We've been looking everywhere for you. How did you get here? I asked, knowing the answer would be impossible. We followed you, silly, Emma said in her 8-year-old voice. We were worried about you. Daddy, why is that woman in the cabin? Lily asked, pointing at Stephanie. She's pretty. Is she prettier than Mommy? My heart was breaking and my mind was fracturing at the same time. These looked like my family, sounded like my family, but Stephanie was right. They couldn't be here. Rebecca didn't even know which trail I'd taken. The girls were supposed to be at school. You're not real, I said, the words feeling like broken glass in my throat. Of course we're real, Rebecca said, stepping closer. Touch me, feel me. I'm as real as I was this morning when you kissed me goodbye. She reached for my hand and her skin felt exactly like Rebecca's skin. Warm, soft, with the tiny scar on her index finger from a cooking accident 2 years ago. But her touch made my arm go numb like touching a live wire. Choose, Daniel, she said. Come home with your family, or stay here with a stranger. But choose now, because we can't wait forever. Behind me, Stephanie whispered. If you go with them, you'll never see your real family again. I don't know how I know that, but I do. I looked at my watch, 3:17 p.m. In 43 minutes, the real Emma would be running onto a soccer field, looking for her father in the stands. The real Rebecca would be checking her phone, wondering why I hadn't called to confirm I'd make it on time. Where is my real family? I asked the thing wearing Rebecca's face. I am your real family, she said, and her voice contained layers now, harmonics that made my teeth ache. We are your real family. We've always been your real family. No, I said, backing toward the cabin. No, you're not. The things wearing my family's faces began to change. Rebecca's smile stretched wider and wider until it split her face in half. Emma's eyes turned completely black. Lily's head rotated 180 degrees while her body remained facing forward. The sound they made wasn't quite screaming and wasn't quite laughter, but it contained the same harmonics as Rebecca's voice, multiplied and amplified until I thought my eardrums would burst. I slammed the cabin door and threw the bolt lock. We need to find another way out, I told Stephanie. There is no other way out, she said. I've been all around this cabin. No windows, no back door, and the walls are solid stone underneath the wood facade. The things outside were circling the cabin now. I could hear footsteps in the grass, but the pattern was wrong. Too many feet moving in unnatural rhythms. Daniel, Rebecca's voice called through the door, normal again. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Just come outside, bring the girl if you want, we have room for both of you." "Don't listen to them," Stephanie whispered. But I was thinking about the real Rebecca, alone at home, probably starting to worry about whether I'd make Emma's game. I was thinking about Emma, who'd scored her first goal last week and couldn't wait to show me her new move. I was thinking about Lily, who still crawled into bed with us during thunderstorms. My radio crackled one more time. Daniel Matthews. A new voice. Male, elderly, with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "This is Ranger Station Alpha. We've been monitoring your frequency. What's your status?" I grabbed the radio. "This is Ranger 7. I'm at an unknown location with the missing hiker. We need immediate extraction." "Negative, Ranger 7. You are currently at your assigned patrol coordinates. Your GPS shows you're standing in the middle of Deer Creek Trail, approximately 50 feet from the missing person's campsite." I looked around the stone cabin, at Stephanie tied to her chair, at the door that was rattling under the pressure of things that used to look like my family. "That's impossible," I said into the radio. "Ranger 7, are you injured? Your vitals are showing extreme stress." "My vitals?" "Your emergency beacon has been transmitting for the past 6 hours. Heart rate 140, core temperature dropping, signs of severe dehydration. We're dispatching a helicopter to your location." I checked my watch, 3:47 p.m., but that was impossible. I'd been in the forest for maybe 4 hours, not 6. It had been 1:23 when I left the grove. "Time works differently here," Stephanie said, reading my expression. "I've been tied to this chair for what feels like days, but my watch still says 8:30 p.m. yesterday." The rattling at the door stopped. Suddenly, everything was silent. "Daniel?" Rebecca's voice, but quieter now, uncertain. "Daniel, I'm scared. I don't know where I am. Everything's wrong. Please help me." "It's a trick," Stephanie whispered. But this voice sounded different, broken, terrified, like the real Rebecca. "Daniel, there are things here that look like you. They're wearing your face, but their eyes are wrong. They keep trying to convince Emma and Lily that they're the real daddy. Please, if you can hear this, we need help." I put my hand on the door latch. "Don't," Stephanie said. "Please, whatever's out there, it's not your family. How can you be sure?" "Because," she said, pointing at the stone wall behind me, "your real family is right there." I turned around. The stone wall had become transparent, like looking through dark water. On the other side, I could see a living room that looked almost like my living room, but the furniture was arranged wrong and the family photos on the mantel showed strangers' faces. Rebecca sat on the couch, holding Emma and Lily close. All three of them looked terrified. They were staring at something off to the side, something I couldn't see from this angle. "Can they see us?" I asked. "I don't think so, but watch." As I watched, another figure entered the frame, a man who looked exactly like me, wearing my ranger uniform, moving with my walk. But something was off about his proportions, his arms too long, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. The thing wearing my face sat down next to my family and put its arm around Rebecca. She flinched away, but it pulled her closer with inhuman strength. "Girls," the fake Daniel said in my voice, "Daddy's home. Did you miss me?" Emma and Lily looked at their mother, confused and frightened. "That's not Daddy," Lily whispered. "Yes, it is," the thing said, and its head rotated slightly to look at Lily with eyes that were completely black. "I'm your daddy. I've always been your daddy. The other daddy was just pretending." I watched my 5-year-old daughter try to process this, watched her small face crumple with confusion and terror. That's when I understood. The doppelganger wasn't just copying my family. It was replacing them, taking their place in reality while trapping the originals somewhere between dimensions. And it had been doing the same thing to me, showing me false versions of my family to keep me distracted while the real substitution took place. "How do we get them out?" I asked Stephanie. "I don't know. But Daniel, look at the time." My watch showed 3:58 p.m. Emma's soccer game was starting in 2 minutes, and I was trapped in an impossible cabin watching my family be terrorized by things wearing our faces. I had failed them. The radio crackled one final time. "Daddy?" Emma's voice, small and scared. "The helicopter is here, but the man who looks like you won't let us go to you. He says we have to stay with him now. He says we'll forget you soon and then everything will be normal again." Through the transparent wall, I watched the thing wearing my face lean close to Emma's ear and whisper something I couldn't hear. Emma's eyes went wide, then slowly began to glaze over. "No," I said, and hit the cabin door with everything I had. The door exploded outward, ripped completely off its hinges by strength I didn't know I possessed. Outside, the clearing was empty except for swirling mist. No sign of the things that had been wearing my family's faces. But I could hear them calling from every direction. "Daniel, where are you going? Daddy, don't leave us. Come back, honey. Everything will be all right." I ignored the voices and ran toward where I thought the trail should be, pulling Stephanie along behind me. The mist made it impossible to see more than a few feet, but I followed the sound of rotors. Somewhere above us, a helicopter was circling. We ran blindly through the forest, crashing through undergrowth, stumbling over fallen logs until suddenly we broke through into bright sunlight. We were standing in Stephanie's campsite. Her tent, her gear, everything exactly as I'd found it that morning. But according to my watch, it was 4:07 p.m., and above us, a Park Service helicopter was descending toward a clearing 50 yards away. "Daniel!" a voice called from the helicopter's loudspeaker. "We have your location. Stay where you are." I looked at Stephanie. She was bleeding from dozens of scratches. Her clothes were torn, but she was solid and real and completely present. "Did that really happen?" I asked her. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm never going camping alone again." The helicopter landed and 2 paramedics ran toward us with a stretcher. Behind them came Ranger Chuck Morrison, my supervisor for the past 8 years. "Matthews, you look like hell," he said. "We've been tracking your emergency beacon for 6 hours. What happened?" 6 hours? I checked my watch again. 4:09 p.m. "Chuck, what time did I start my shift this morning?" "You didn't start this morning. You called in sick yesterday, remember? Said you had the flu. We've been covering your sector since Wednesday." Wednesday? Today was Friday. I pulled out my cell phone and called home. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached the Matthews family. We're not available right now, but leave a message and we'll get back to you." Rebecca's voice. Normal. Happy. Exactly like it had always been. "Where are they, Chuck?" "Where are who?" "My family. Rebecca, Emma, Lily. Where are they?" Chuck looked at the paramedics, then back at me. "Daniel, you don't have a family. You're not married. You live alone in that apartment on Pine Street, remember? Have you hit your head?" The world tilted sideways. "Emma's soccer game," I said. "I promised I'd be there." "Who's Emma?" I showed him the photos on my phone. Rebecca making pancakes, Emma in her soccer uniform, Lily with her stuffed unicorn. But the screen was blank. No photos, no contacts, no call history. "Daniel," Chuck said gently, "I think you need medical attention." As they loaded me into the helicopter, I looked back at the forest one last time. Standing at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the shadows, I saw them. Rebecca, Emma, and Lily watching me leave. They looked sad but not surprised, like they'd known this moment would come. Rebecca raised her hand in a small wave. Emma and Lily did the same. Then the helicopter lifted off, and they were gone. 3 months later. I'm writing this from my apartment on Pine Street. Alone, just like Chuck said. The psychological evaluation concluded I'd suffered a severe dissociative episode brought on by altitude sickness and dehydration. The official report states that Stephanie Chen was found dehydrated but unharmed at her campsite, with no memory of the previous 48 hours. But I remember everything. I remember the taste of Rebecca's vanilla coffee. I remember Emma's grass-stained soccer jersey. I remember Lily's unicorn dress and the way she giggled when I tickled her feet. I remember a life that apparently never existed. The doctors say these false memories are a common symptom of severe psychological trauma. They've given me medication that's supposed to help distinguish between reality and hallucination. But the pills make everything feel flat and gray, so I stopped taking them. Because here's what the doctors don't understand. I can still hear them sometimes. Late at night, when the apartment is quiet, I hear Rebecca calling my name from the next room. I hear Emma and Lily playing in a bedroom that doesn't exist. I hear the sound of a family that loved me, that needed me, that might still be trapped somewhere between dimensions, waiting for me to find a way back to them. The official case file on Stephanie Chen's disappearance has been closed. She returned to Berkeley and finished her graduate degree. I heard she got married last month to a guy she met in her organic chemistry class, but sometimes I wonder, is that really Stephanie Chen? Or is it something else? Something that's learned to wear her face so perfectly that even she believes it's real. And if the original Stephanie is still trapped in that impossible cabin, how many other people have been replaced? How many families have been substituted with perfect copies while the originals fade away in places that exist between reality and nightmare? I keep my Ranger uniform in the closet, cleaned and pressed, ready for the day when I figure out how to go back. Because somewhere in those mountains my family is waiting for me. They have to be. They have to be. Otherwise, what's the point of remembering love that never existed? Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Daniel's family. I read every single one. Was Daniel's family real? Or were they elaborate false memories created by the doppelganger entity? Were they replaced by perfect copies? Or was Daniel himself the copy, implanted with false memories to drive him insane? The truth might be more terrifying than any of these possibilities. My name is Matthew, and I've been a forest ranger for 23 years. I've pulled bodies from ravines, tracked lost hikers through blizzards, and faced down charging bears with nothing but a can of pepper spray and steel nerves. In all that time, I never believed in anything I couldn't shoot, track, or radio for backup. Until October 13th, 2018, until Taylor. The morning started like any other at Blackwood National Forest. Coffee at 5:30 a.m., black and bitter, the way I'd been drinking it since my Army days. My wife Sarah had already left for her nursing shift, kissing my forehead and whispering, "Come home safe," like she did every morning. My daughter Emma, 16 and fierce as her mother, was still asleep, her phone charging next to a half-finished AP history essay about the Vietnam War. I was checking my gear when the call came in. Standard missing hiker protocol, Taylor Morrison, 22 years old, last seen on the Devil's Ridge Trail at approximately 11:47 p.m. the previous night. Solo camping trip, experienced outdoorsman according to his father. But Devil's Ridge wasn't a place you wandered after dark. Not if you knew the stories. I'd dismissed those stories for decades. Local folklore about the old mining camp from the 1960s, about the incident that made them shut everything down. Superstitious bullshit, I always figured. Mountains were dangerous enough without inventing monsters. But as I drove my truck up the winding Forest Service road that morning, something felt wrong. The October air carried a metallic taste, like copper pennies dissolved in rainwater. The usual bird chatter was absent, replaced by an oppressive silence that made my ears ring. Even my radio crackled with strange interference, whispers that sounded almost like Latin. I found Taylor's campsite at 8:15 a.m. Orange North Face tent, perfectly set up. Coleman sleeping bag still warm. Fresh coffee grounds in a camp cup, steam still rising. Everything exactly as it should be, except for one detail that made my blood turn to ice water. Taylor's hiking boots were placed neatly outside the tent, laces tied, pointing toward the tree line. But there were no footprints leading away. None. 23 years of tracking experience, and I'd never seen anything like it. The pine needles around his site were undisturbed, the morning dew pattern unbroken. It was as if Taylor had simply vanished into thin air. That's when I heard it. A voice, faint but unmistakably human, calling from deep in the woods. "Help me, please." My training kicked in. I grabbed my pack, checked my GPS coordinates, and followed the voice. Standard search and rescue. Nothing I hadn't done 1,000 times before, but as I pushed through the dense underbrush, the forest began to change around me. The trees grew larger, more twisted. The canopy overhead darkened to an unnatural twilight despite the morning sun. The temperature dropped to 20 degrees in as many steps, my breath forming white clouds that lingered too long in the still air. And that voice kept calling, always just ahead, always just out of sight. "Help me. I'm hurt. Please find me." I followed it for what felt like hours. My GPS showed impossible readings, coordinates that placed me simultaneously at 3 different locations. My compass spun wildly, needle dancing like it was possessed. The voice led me deeper into parts of Blackwood I'd never seen before, despite patrolling these woods for over 2 decades. That's when I found the clearing. It shouldn't have existed. No clearing appeared on any of my maps, satellite or otherwise, but there it was. A perfect circle of dead grass maybe 50 yards across, surrounded by trees that grew at impossible angles, their bark blackened as if by ancient fire. In the center stood the remnants of a structure. Not a cabin or a mine shaft, but something else. Stone foundations arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly, covered in symbols that seemed to writhe when I wasn't looking straight at them, and rising from the center a metal cross bent and twisted hanging upside down. The cross was old, older than it should have been, rusted through in places, but the metal underneath gleamed with an oily iridescence that reflected no light. Carved into its base was a date, October 13th, 1966. 52 years ago to the day. The voice called again, and this time I pinpointed its source. It was coming from below the inverted cross, from some kind of opening in the ground that my eyes refused to focus on properly. The air around it shimmered like heat waves, and the smell that rose from the depths was indescribable. Sulfur and rot and something else. Something fundamentally wrong. "Help me. Matthew. Please." It knew my name. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Matthew's situation? Comment below. I should have called for backup. Should have radioed the station, marked the coordinates, followed protocol. But something compelled me forward. Not curiosity. Compulsion. My legs moved without my permission, carrying me toward that twisted cross and the darkness beneath it. As I approached, I could see crude steps carved into the earth descending into absolute blackness. The voice rose from below, weaker now, more desperate. "Matthew, it has me. It won't let me go." Taylor. It had to be Taylor down there, hurt, trapped, depending on me. 23 years of service, and I'd never left anyone behind. I wasn't about to start. I clicked on my mag light and started down. The temperature dropped another 20 degrees with each step. My flashlight beam seemed to bend and twist, creating shadows that moved independently of their sources. The walls were carved stone, covered in more of those writhing symbols, and they seemed to pulse with their own faint red glow. 20 steps down. 30. 40. My radio was dead now. Nothing but static and those whispered Latin phrases. My GPS showed error messages. Even my watch had stopped, the hands frozen at 11:47, the exact time Taylor had last been seen. At the bottom, the passage opened into a chamber that shouldn't have existed. The walls stretched up beyond my flashlight's reach, disappearing into darkness above. More crosses hung from the ceiling, all inverted, all carved with dates spanning decades. 1966, 1974, 1981, 1987, 1993, 1999, 2005, 2012. Every 7 years, a pattern. And in the center of the chamber, bound to the largest cross with chains that seemed to be made of shadow itself, was Taylor. He looked exactly as he had in the photo his father had shown me that morning. Same tousled brown hair, same freckled face, same Northwestern University sweatshirt. But his eyes were wrong. They reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's. And when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "Thank God you found me, Matthew. I've been waiting so long." The rational part of my mind screamed warnings. The symbols on the walls were glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The temperature had dropped so low I could see my breath, but Taylor showed no signs of being cold. His skin had an unnatural pallor, like old parchment, and I swear I could see veins of black threading just beneath the surface. But he was just a kid, a scared kid who needed help. That's what 23 years of training told me. I approached the cross looking for a way to free him from those shadow chains. As I got closer, I could smell something coming off his skin. That same sulfur and rot stench, but sweeter somehow, like communion wine left to spoil. "How long have you been down here, son?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Taylor smiled, and I saw that his teeth had grown. They were longer, sharper, arranged in rows like a shark's. When he spoke, black liquid dripped from the corners of his mouth. "Since 1966, Matthew. I've been waiting since 1966. That's when I understood. The dates on the crosses, the 7-year pattern, the voice that had led me here, calling my name. This wasn't Taylor Morrison, 22-year-old college student from Portland. This was something else, something that had been wearing Taylor's face, using Taylor's voice, feeding on Taylor's memories. The demon of Devil's Ridge. I turned to run, but the passage behind me had vanished. In its place stood a solid wall of stone, covered in those writhing symbols that now blazed with crimson light. The chamber was a trap, and I'd walked right into it. "Don't be afraid, Matthew," the thing wearing Taylor's form said, its voice now a symphony of whispers. "You're going to help me finally leave this place. After 52 years of imprisonment, I'm ready to walk in the world again. I just need a new face to wear." The shadow chains holding it to the cross began to dissolve, turning to smoke that smelled like burning churches. It stepped down from the twisted cross, moving with movements that were too fluid, too graceful for human joints. Its flesh began to shift and bubble, revealing glimpses of what lay beneath, something ancient and hungry and utterly inhuman. "You know," it continued conversationally, "I've been studying you for weeks, Matthew. Learning your routines, your relationships, your fears. Did you know you talk in your sleep?" Sarah finds it endearing. "And Emma. Such a bright girl. She's going to miss her father terribly." Rage. Pure, hot rage flooded through me at the mention of my family. This thing, this abomination, had been watching them, planning to take my place among them. The fear that had paralyzed me burned away in an instant, replaced by something I understood much better: fury. I've never been a religious man. Sunday services were something Sarah dragged me to twice a year, Christmas and Easter, more social obligation than spiritual calling. But standing in that hellish chamber, facing something that wanted to steal my identity and terrorize my family, I found myself reaching for the one weapon I'd never thought to carry: faith. "Our Father," I began, my voice cracking but growing stronger with each word. "Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." The thing that looked like Taylor screamed, a sound like metal tearing, like children crying, like souls being torn apart. The red glow from the symbols flickered and dimmed. "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Steam began rising from its flesh where my words touched it. The perfect mimicry of Taylor's face started to melt, revealing glimpses of something underneath. Too many teeth, too many eyes, skin like charred leather stretched over bones that bent in ways bones shouldn't bend. "Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses." I was screaming the words now, putting every ounce of love I felt for Sarah and Emma into each syllable. The chamber shook, dust and stone chips raining from the ceiling. The inverted crosses began to right themselves, their metal groaning in protest. As we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation. The demon lunged at me, its true form finally revealed. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with limbs that seemed to stretch and contract like liquid shadow. Its face was a nightmare of shifting features, sometimes human, sometimes animal, sometimes geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. But my words struck it like physical blows, each phrase of the prayer burning through its supernatural hide. But deliver us from evil. The final words rang through the chamber like a bell, and the demon screamed once more before simply unraveling. Its form dissolved into black smoke that was sucked up through cracks in the ceiling, pulled away to whatever hell had spawned it. The red glow died, leaving only the pure white beam of my flashlight. In the sudden silence, I heard a groan from the corner of the chamber. There, partially hidden behind fallen stones, was the real Taylor Morrison. Unconscious, hypothermic, but alive. Really alive. I could tell by the normal rhythm of his breathing, the natural color of his skin. The passage out had reappeared, and I carried Taylor up those carved steps, through the clearing that was already beginning to fade around the edges, back to the normal forest, where my radio crackled to life with concerned voices asking for my status report. The clearing was gone when the search and rescue team arrived 30 minutes later. Just normal woods, normal trees, normal October morning. They found us by GPS coordinates that placed us exactly where we should have been, following the logical search pattern from Taylor's campsite. The official report listed it as a standard rescue. Hiker had fallen, hit his head, wandered disoriented until he collapsed from exposure. Textbook case. The medical team treated his hypothermia, and he was released from the hospital 2 days later with no memory of the previous 48 hours. I never told anyone what really happened down there. Who would believe it? But I've made some changes since that day. I go to church every Sunday now, sitting next to Sarah and Emma in the third pew from the front. I carry a small silver cross in my pocket, blessed by Father McKenna himself, and I've placed similar crosses at strategic points throughout Blackwood National Forest, especially around the area that used to be called Devil's Ridge. The old mining records, when I finally tracked them down, told an interesting story. In October 1966, a group of university students had conducted some kind of occult ritual in an abandoned mine shaft, attempting to summon what they called an angel of knowledge. The ritual went wrong. 7 students died, and 1 professor, a Dr. Marcus Thorne, simply vanished. The mine was sealed, the area was declared off limits, and the whole incident was classified. But every 7 years, someone would go missing in those woods. Always in October. Always young people. Usually alone. Until now. The cycle is broken. The demon is gone, banished back to whatever infernal realm spawned it. Devil's Ridge is just another forest trail now. Perfectly safe for hikers and campers. But sometimes when I'm doing my rounds on quiet October nights, I swear I can still hear whispers in the wind. Latin phrases I don't understand, carried on air that tastes of sulfur and promises of power. And I know that evil never truly dies. It just waits for another opportunity, another weakness to exploit. That's why I keep my cross close, my faith strong, and my family closer. Because in this job, you never know what might be lurking in the dark spaces between the trees, wearing a friendly face and calling your name. My name is Matthew, and I've seen the face of evil. But I've also learned that sometimes, when everything else fails, faith is enough to light the way home. The real Taylor Morrison graduated from Northwestern University in 2020 with a degree in environmental science. He sends me a Christmas card every year, always with the same message: "Thank you for bringing me home." He doesn't remember what happened in those woods, and I pray he never will. Some knowledge is too dangerous to carry. Some monsters are too real to forget. And some battles can only be won on your knees. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. and comment your theory about what really happened to Taylor during those missing hours. I read every single one,